How's everybody doing? It's good to see you all, and it's my privilege to welcome Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Speaker Ryan. It's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. Thanks.
And I want to thank all of you for joining us. We had opportunity just to see a snapshot of the factory here this morning. We walked through, saw a 767 line, 777 line, 787. And I want to thank all of you for the great work you're doing. As I told the speaker, best people in the world, best talent in the world, building the best airplanes in the world. So thanks for what you're doing. Yeah. We got a few topics we're going to chat about today and have some open Q&A. But I want to thank Speaker Ryan for your leadership, everything you're doing on the behalf of the country. Your leadership on things like tax reform is a big deal to us here at Boeing. As we talked going through the factory, or just to give you an example, you see in this factory about 3/4 of the airplanes we build go to customers overseas. Right?
Wow.
But 90% of the jobs are here in the U.S. So we're the biggest exporter, biggest manufacturing building in the world, and things like tax reform help us be competitive. And I think what you're doing on creating a transformative tax system for the future will really unleash economic growth. It's going to build high-quality manufacturing jobs and, frankly, grow standard of living for all Americans. So thanks for what you're doing there.
My pleasure.
And I'll flip it over to you for a few opening comments, and then we're just going to do some open Q&A.
First of all, it's a real honor to be here. I've been touring manufacturing facilities for a long time. I have never seen anything like this in my entire life. This is really cool. I mean, I'm serious. This is. You talk about the need for exports, and I completely agree. You got 2/3 or 3/4 of what you do is exports, but I just think you ought to be proud of the export from Wisconsin in the name of Russell Wilson that we sent
there
here.
You go, yeah. Not bad,
you're welcome for that, all right? So we're pretty proud of him,
a
too.
few Seahawks fans.
Yeah, I know. I kind of noticed that, but we can talk Packers, Seahawks anytime you want. I just want to acknowledge my friend and my colleague, Dan Newhouse, is here from Washington State as well. He serves us in Congress very, very well. And good to see you here, Dan. He didn't get the memo. Dark slacks, blue shirt, Iron Man watch, $29.95 at Farm and Fleet in Janesville. I don't know where you got yours.
Look at that.
We got the same exact watch. It's pretty cool. But honestly, it's really a pleasure to be here. I'm traveling around the country talking about tax reform, and I want to have an interactive conversation, so I know Dennis and I are going to do that. But we were at Miller Brewing in Milwaukee, which is a big deal, big industry for us. Please drink Miller if you're going to drink beer. Just kidding. I'm kind of joking there, but we are over in New Balance shoes. We make the only running shoes, in America, made in America, over in Massachusetts, New Balance. We were with the National Association of Manufacturers in D.C. and here. We were at Intel yesterday down in Portland, and we're here today to cap this off at the biggest manufacturing facility in the world, Boeing. And so one of the reasons why we're talking about this is the last time we reformed our tax code was the year I got my driver's license. Anyone want to guess where that is?
Long
2006, 1996, no, 1986. So last time we reformed our tax code was 1986. And America at that time put our tax system in a real competitive position for the world. And what we did was we tripped off competition around the globe for countries making their tax systems more competitive. Well, we're on the back end of that right now, and we have the least competitive tax system in the industrialized world. What does that mean? Well, clearly and very specifically for Boeing, it means we are taxing this business, these planes, your jobs in this country at a much higher tax rate than our foreign competitors tax theirs. And when we tax ourselves a whole lot higher than our foreign competitors tax theirs, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So Airbus, 20% tax rate. China is Comac?
Comac, yeah.
Comac, the Chinese manufacturer, 15% tax rate. You know what the tax rate here is? 35%. That puts us at a huge competitive disadvantage. I'm just in awe that in spite of all of that, you're still doing so well. You're still the leader. You're still number one. Imagine how much more you could do if we just level this playing field and stop tying a hand behind our backs. That's what tax reform is all about on the big picture. individually, for families, for us, for workers, let's clean this system up, make it easy. How many of you wait till April 15th to pay your taxes not knowing what it's going to look like? That's kind of ridiculous. We want to clean the system up so simple so you can fill out your taxes on the form of a postcard. So there's a lot to do, and we think this is all about American manufacturing, American competitiveness, American jobs, but ultimately it means faster economic growth and higher wages, more take-home pay. That's what we're focused on doing. It's about improving people's lives and putting our country in a good position. So I'm just honored to be here to talk with you about this, and I really appreciate the chance and opportunity. So thank you, Dennis.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you being here. Also wanted to acknowledge a couple of my teammates here with us today. Kevin McAllister, who's CEO of our commercial airplane business. Kevin's here. Greg Smith as well, who's our CFO and heads up enterprise strategy and performance, and Tim Keating, who runs our government operations team, and Jeanette Ramos, who runs supply chain and operations. So great team here. And I got to call out Mark Jenks too, since we're sitting in the 787 line here. This is Mark's production line here. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into questions, and any topics fair game. And I think I got one right here. We got some roving mics out here, and we'll just go ahead and tag team on those. Go ahead.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you. Good
Yeah,
morning.
there you go.
Good morning and welcome,
Morning.
and thank you for talking with us this morning and visiting our beautiful plant. Clearly, tax reform is a high priority, but I'm sure there are other things you want to accomplish. So I wonder if
Can
you
you
could,
put it a little closer to your yeah.
How's that?
Yeah,
Okay.
almost like you're eating it.
All right, thank you. But so tax reform is the highest priority, but I'm sure there are other things you would like to accomplish. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your other priorities for this year.
Yeah. So we have a number of priorities. It's funny, Dan and I and our colleagues ran on a very specific agenda in 2016. We called it A Better Way. And it was a series of reforms that we think were important to tackling our country's big problems, before they tackle us. And so we're working down that agenda very clearly. One of them is we think we were over-regulating our economy so much that regulations present a huge hidden cost on the economy in a major, major way. They're just as tough as taxes, yep, and even less predictable. So we've spent the first 6 months of this year working on a regulatory reform agenda. There's this one kind of tool we can use legislatively called the Congressional Review Act. It's a bill that cannot be filibustered or blocked in the Senate. It was used once in the last 20 years. We have now used it 14 times successfully to roll back what we think are excessive burdensome regulations to make it easier for businesses, particularly the manufacturers, to plan for the future. We've got the 15th one in the queue right now. We also feel very strongly that our military has been under duress. Our military, Dennis knows this really, really well. We've talked about this sequester, 20 times in the last year.
At least. Yeah.
The military has been hollowed out. We have not enough brigades, and as of last year, we only had like 3 combat-ready brigades. Not to mention the fact that we've got a lot of needs to replace aging equipment. That's what the whole tanker contract's all about. So we have one down payment on rebuilding our military that's in law, done in April, about a $25 billion increase in the military. And we passed already through the House this summer a long-term plan for the military to rebuild their stockpile, to rebuild their readiness. And that long-term vision for the military is out of the House, it's out of the Senate. Now we're working to harmonize that piece of legislation. That's a huge piece of it as well. Another issue that we feel very strongly about is unemployment is not all that high, right? In Wisconsin, it's like 3.7%. Nationally, it's fairly low. But what those statistics aren't counting are the millions of able-bodied men and women in this country who aren't working or aren't looking for work. And we believe we need to reform our welfare system so that it is always focused on making work pay, so that it is always focused on getting people out of poverty into the workforce, from where they are to where they can get a good career that's family supporting, that's independent. And one way or another, well-intentioned programs ended up becoming a poverty trap. So the highest tax rate in America is not paid by Boeing at 35%, which is the highest corporate tax rate. It's the single mom with 2 kids earning 24 grand in benefits, who will lose like 80 cents on the dollar if she goes and takes a job. And so we have to change the way these benefits work so that it always makes work pay. We passed career and technical skills education reform in July in the House. That's over in the Senate, because we want to close that skills gap. We want to make it so easy for a person to go get the skills they need to get the career they want, and we want the welfare system not to discourage work, but to encourage work, so that an able-bodied person can take care of their family, but more importantly, go get a career that they love. So we're trying to make 2-year school cool, again. Not everybody has to go to 4-year, and you can get great careers, great jobs, and we're trying to overhaul that whole thing. So I can go on and on and on. What I just described are things we've already done in the House that are moving through the legislative system. You can go to didyouknow.gop and see all the bills that we've been passing in the House. A lot of it's not really known. There's a lot of distractions out there. We've got a huge foreign policy challenges. So a lot of these things that we've already done or are in the midst of doing aren't well known, but we think that these are critical to improving people's lives, and that's why we're keeping our focus and getting our job done.
And those are the kind of things that are making a big difference. You'll connect the dots to our business here. As the speaker talked about, this idea of investing in vocational training, right? That's going to help us with our manufacturing base. Regulatory reform, right? It's FAA certification processes on these airplanes, streamlining that. Defense budget stability. You saw it on the tanker line over here, right? That again is creating manufacturing jobs for the future. So these initiatives are turning into real jobs and stability for the future. Other questions out there? We got one over here, all right?
Hello, Garrett Van Hollebank.
Hold it close.
All right, so if we pass these reforms, how do we ensure that the monies created stay within the communities and within America, as opposed to going to shareholders or jobs being shipped overseas?
Yeah, so first I'd say right now it's so bad that the money that we make in companies in many cases stay overseas. They don't even come here. I was at Intel yesterday. Intel, 50,000 employees in America, 19,000 in Oregon alone. Yeah. And Intel ran the numbers for us. They told me that because of the US tax code, each one of their factories, they would save $2 billion in taxes alone per factory over 10 years if they move it overseas. So right now, we're basically telling American businesses, don't make stuff in America because the taxes will hurt you. You're better off manufacturing overseas and importing it into the country under our current tax code. So what we're trying to do is just completely remove that disincentive, get our taxes at or above the international average tax rate, and make the incentive the other way around. We want to encourage, we call it capital expenditure. All this that you do in here is capital expenditure. You do $6 billion a year in R&D and CapEx.
Right, you got it. Yep.
So we want more businesses to do that. So the closest answer I can give you is take your money and put it in your people, put it in your factories, buy more equipment, switch to composite from metal, and you can write that off your taxes. Yeah. That means don't put it into shareholders, don't put it into this, that, put it into factories, put it into American businesses, hire more workers, you'll get a better deal on your taxes. Yeah. We don't have that right now to any extent, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reverse the incentive so that it makes money, it makes sense to make things in America and export them overseas.
Yeah. And again, just to connect the dots there, right, on tax reform, that benefit, coming back to cash performance in our company, our number one use of cash is investing in innovation in our factories, right? You see what we're trying to do on the new 777X Composite Wing Center here. We'd like to do more of that. So as tax reform happens, it's going to drive us to innovate and invest in our factories and in manufacturing.
What it basically means is we want to get the tax rates down so we're at least level with our peers, but beyond that, take the tax rates down so you're level with peers, so you're competitive. Yeah. But then if you invest in your factories, in your workers, in your people, you can bring your tax rates even lower if you do that. That's what we think is a good incentive.
Yeah. Other questions? One right up here. Get a mic up here.
And then he's got one over there, I can tell.
Okay. My name is Nixon Opondo. Assuming that the shareholders buy into getting the money back into the factory, I'm wondering how, for example, you mentioned in your recent speech.
A little closer.
You mentioned in your recent speech that about $2 trillion are brought into the country by manufacturing jobs. So, based on your new tax reform, how much more should we expect over the next 5 years?
That's a good question. So, just to set the stage to your question, between $2 to $3 trillion of American profits that have already occurred based on sales overseas are parked overseas. So unlike every other industrialized country, we have a tax system that double taxes those exports. Everybody else, meaning every other country, if you make something and sell it overseas, you pay that country's tax, you're done, you can bring that money home. Not true for America. You take a plane, you make it here, you sell it overseas, and then you want to bring that profit back, you have to pay that additional American tax in order to bring that money back. So guess what? Companies don't do it. And then you're like the notable exception. I mean, you really are. Most other companies just invest overseas. They're not going to take their money back. We're real proud of Harley Davidson. We make those in Milwaukee. You take a Harley, you make it in Milwaukee, you sell it in Germany, you pay the German tax, and then you have to pay an additional US tax to bring that money back. But if Honda makes a Goldwing, which is an inferior competitor, if Honda makes a Goldwing, sells it in Germany, they pay the German tax, they're done, they bring that money back to Japan. So this is what we're doing to hurt ourselves. We're basically saying, get rid of that system and tell everybody you can bring your money back tax-free, because what we know will happen will be a lot of money will come back. How much, it's hard to say. Some of it's tied up in brick and mortar, a lot of it's tied up in cash. So we think hundreds and hundreds of billions at the very least will immediately come back into the US economy to be reinvested in plants and equipment right here. If we just remove this barrier of taxing our money from coming back into our country. It makes it easier to make the decision to stay in America, to make things in America, to build things here, export there. Here's the quick deal. 96% of the people in the world, they're in the other countries, they're not in this country.
Yeah.
So if we want to have a good, strong, growing economy, we got to make things here, sell them overseas, bring the money back, rinse and repeat. And right now our tax laws make it harder to do that.
Great question. Thank you. We have another one over here. Yep.
Hi, Speaker. Welcome to the Boeing site. Welcome to the world's largest building, right?
Closer.
My question for you is, so I'm a U.S. veteran, United States Air Force, and we're concerned right now, what's going on around the world, various different nations heating up, and we start talking about taxes, and we start talking about what are we going to do with them. How is it going to reflect to our military, and how do you feel about bringing up our military to support those things? We have the infrastructure going back and across the nation. This will help us, do we need to bolster our forces? And, Boeing is a good way to look at it for that.
I'd say three things, just off the top of my head. Number one, Dan and I just passed a bill in the House giving it the biggest pay raise for our troops in active duty in over 10 years. So that's number one, because we want to make sure that they have family supporting wages. Number two, we've been working closely with the military to make sure that people coming out of the military can have the skills they need to go get good jobs, literally the technical certifications, so that they can actually come out of the military with degrees in hand so that they can go straight into the workforce. Three, we believe in the programs that encourage businesses to hire veterans. We think that's really important. Fourth thing I'd say, and this is done already, if you remember, we had these just disgraceful problems at the VA where we had these long waiting lists where veterans weren't getting the care they needed, the care they earned and deserved, and the VA was covering it up. Well, we've cleaned out the VA, we've reformed the whole system. That law is done. It's now fresh on the books to overhaul the entire VA system. We put in place this thing we call the choice program, so that if you're getting frustrated, if you're not getting the care you need, we'll let you go to the local healthcare provider, hospital, or whatever, to make sure you get your care you needed. But we're overhauling the whole VA. So we need a modernized VA so veterans get the benefits they earned and deserve. We need to make sure that people coming out of the military have the educational skills and the certificates so they can go straight into the private sector. We want to encourage the private sector to hire our veterans because we have this generation of people.
Yeah.
It's astounding the leadership qualities we've gotten that with the generation. And then, as I mentioned before, we got to stop hollowing out our military. I mean, it's equipment, it's resetting the force structure, it's preparedness, it's training, it's all of those things. That's why Dennis and I have had a lot of talks about things we call the sequester and the spending caps. Well, we've already made huge changes in those already this year. One of them's in law, one of them's in the midst of getting done, and I'm pretty confident that when we're all said and done, we're going to be rebuilding our military, and we're going to make it so that no other country can come close to us. We think that puts us in a strategic advantage in addition to all the other things.
We're really well aligned on these objectives here. And by the way, thank you for your
thank you for
service.
serving.
Yeah, we've got more than 20,000 veterans working at Boeing, and one of the biggest investments we make in the community is investments in our veterans, helping with retraining as they come into the workforce, and investing in their families. We know that that's a really important part of the transition as well. So our commitment on the community investment side really aligns with these objectives as well, and especially what's being done on the veteran workforce. I think it's a big deal. As you said, those veterans are coming in with great skills and great leadership capacity, and it makes a big difference for a business like us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Other questions out there? I see a hand over here too. This side of the room's getting the advantage right now. Let's go here and then we'll come back here, okay? Go ahead.
Good morning. First a comment.
Can you hold it real close to your mouth?
Yes, I can. First a comment. I watched your town hall on CNN on, I think it was Monday night from Wisconsin, and so thanks for that information on the 300 passed bills. I was not aware of that. My question is, I work on Tanker HR. Boeing prides itself on respect and communicating transparency to employees, and also expects ethical behavior.
Yeah.
I don't know that every person sees that from our president right now. So my question for you, Speaker Ryan, is how do you see yourself personally influencing, and are you confident that you can influence the president?
It's a day-by-day deal. I'm kind of joking. First, you control your own actions, and you lead by example. If you saw what I was saying in Racine, and I've been saying pretty much every day since, what I think needs to be said over and over again about repulsive bigotry and racism in this country, and how we can never get normal with this. We must always, every single time, stand up and repudiate it and condemn it unequivocally every time. Because the day we start getting numb to this is the day they've gotten oxygen and they become normalized, and it's the day we have a huge hit to our culture and our society. So I think it's really important, all of us, it doesn't matter what you believe politically or whether you're a Packer fan or a Seahawk fan, every single one of us need to stand up and speak to this. We have different speaking styles, clearly, and I think what it is we're in constant contact to try and put together a shared agenda which we agree on, and we're working together to move that shared agenda. For me, it's really important that the president succeeds, because if he succeeds, then the country succeeds. What am I talking about? This agenda we've been discussing right here. Rebuilding our military, honoring our veterans, making sure that people in poverty can get job training and skills and work incentives to go into the workforce, get good careers, upward mobility, opportunity, and economic growth and competitiveness in this 21st century global economy. All of these things will make all of our lives better. It will give us better opportunities. It will get us better take-home pay. It will give us a more confident future. And politically and geopolitically, as a country, the stronger we are militarily, the stronger we are economically, the healthier we are as a country, the more likely we can take any challenge that comes our way. And that's what's been the marvel of this country. The way I see it all is, it all comes together in advancing this American idea, a beautiful thing that our founders created that we're always working on perfecting. The condition of your birth does not determine the outcome of your life in this country. You can make it, you can be who you are. The only thing limiting you is your own God-given potential, and we want to make sure that we can maximize everyone's chance and opportunity to reach that potential. So to me, it's about those aspirational goals, and then doing what you need to do to actually fulfill and achieve those goals, and working with the president to do that. So I think it's important about results, actions, and yes, the words we use are very important, and that's why all of us have a big role to play in that. And so to me, it's lead by example, work and collaborate to get these things done, and at the end of the day, if we achieve these things, which I believe we will all be better off for having done so.
You got it. I'd just like to reinforce the speaker's points there on commitment to values in the strongest way possible. Reinforce and reaffirm this idea that our enduring values as a company are the most important part of our mission and our purpose. And our commitment to integrity, our commitment to diversity and inclusion, to respecting our teammates, it's what makes this business work. It's why we build the greatest products in the world, is because we've committed to those values. And that has to be the foundation for everything we do. So we're really aligned on that objective, and staying engaged in the right way so we can influence and lead by example. But I appreciate your question. I think it's just foundationally important
Absolutely.
to who we are as a company, who we are as a country. Yeah. We have another one over here.
Hi, going back to about.
Can you hold it closer?
Oh, sorry. So going back to about making taxes simpler again. Now, does that mean that you're going to look at removing the mortgage interest deduction, all those deductions, and then, but you're talking about corporate taxes and trying to incentivize companies to do certain things, which is how the tax code got complicated again.
Yeah.
So how do you not end up in a super vicious cycle where you simplify things and you need incentives and then you add more stuff to it and rinse, rather, repeat?
It's a really, really good question. You pretty much struck to the heart of the whole issue right there with that question. So let me stick with the individual side, the personal side, which we didn't talk much about because we're at a business talking about their business taxes. On the individual side, there's one of two ways to go. The status quo, which basically says you're going to have high tax rates and a really complicated tax code, which is another way of saying you send your money to Washington, and then if you do what Washington and special interests want you to do, you can keep some of your money back. The alternative to that is what we're pushing, which is clear out a lot of the special interest loopholes, condense a bunch of these redundant deductions, and just lower your tax rates for everybody across the board. Go from 7 tax brackets to 3, raise the standard deduction. That means by raising the standard deduction, collapsing loopholes, shrinking tax brackets, you literally have a postcard-sized tax form. There are 2 things that we think, actually 3 things that we think are generally very important for all people that I would call not a narrow special interest thing. Owning a home, donating to a charity, saving for retirement. Those are 3 things that we all want, that we all need, and we think those things ought to be encouraged. But all the narrow special interest things that are in the code that make it so much more complicated and the rates higher, we got to get rid of them. And by raising that standard deduction and collapsing our tax brackets, we're going to cut your taxes. We're not only going to cut your taxes, we're going to make it so easy for you to fill out your taxes so that you're not up in the air as to what your taxes are going to look like come April 15th, and you can do it yourself on a postcard. On businesses, it's the same theory, the same philosophy. Get rid of all these sort of special interest deductions that try to micromanage business decision making. Just lower the rates and say, invest in your business, whatever. If you're buying a CNC machine, you're buying, more lighting, whatever, you decide. It's your money. You decide what you want to do, but we got to get these rates down so we're globally competitive, and then we've got to make it so that you're incentivized to make stuff in America. That's why we want to do those 2 things, and that right there dramatically simplifies the tax code and lowers our tax rates. I really believe that if we don't do this, we will not hit 3% economic growth in America. I believe if we do this, which I think we will do this, we will get to 3% economic growth in America. What does that mean? Since the 2008 recession, we've been hovering around 1% to 2% growth. It's another way of saying the economy is not growing like it needs to for us to get more wages, higher wages, better living standards, faster productivity. If we can get that faster economic growth, that translates into higher take-home pay for all of us, for our families, and it translates into faster economic growth for America. So that's why we say, get rid of the junk, stop micromanaging, simplify, lower the tax rates, and by the way, it's a lot more fair. It's fair. I mean, you may be living down in the same street, making the same kind of income as your next door neighbor, but you can pay completely different taxes these days because of the way our tax system works. Businesses, it's even more like that. So we just want to streamline this thing. If you make the same money and the same income as the next person or the next business, you should pay the same taxes. That's not how it works today. And so we want to have simplicity, fairness, be really competitive, and encourage more take-home pay and faster economic growth. And we think get Washington and special interests out of micromanaging behavior and streamline this system. And that is basically the core of what our tax reform plan is all about.
You got it. And that'll drive competitiveness, as the speaker said. And when we drive competitiveness, we win in the marketplace. And when we win, we invest in the business. That number 1 use of our cash, invest in innovation and in our factory spaces. So Other questions? We got one up here. Yeah.
He's here. She's right here.
Right up here.
Welcome, Representative Ryan. I just had one question that we're talking about revamping the tax system both for business and individuals. And my question is, how long do you think this process will take?
Yeah.
I know you said, it didn't
it hasn't
change
been done
until you
since
were 16.
1986.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
We finish this up next week, right?
that's my question.
So our goal is to get this done this year in 2017, in calendar year 2017. In Congress, we worked on this all last year in 2016, hoping to be ready so that if we had the opportunity politically to be able to pass this bill, we wouldn't sit there in January of 2017, just starting the work. So we've been working on this for almost 2 years. Actually, I've been working on this pretty much my adult life. I worked for Jack Kemp, whose son Jeff played for the Seahawks as a quarterback.
That's right.
Back in the day on this issue. So this has been over 30 years in the making. Specifically in Congress, it's been almost 2 years in the making. And now we're getting to the point where we're really getting ready to stick the landing and start moving the legislation through the process this fall. Our goal is to get it done this year so that when you roll out of bed on January 1, 2018, you're experiencing a new tax system so that businesses have the certainty they need to make good business decisions, to grow, to invest, to reach and expand. That's why we think we can get 3% economic growth in 2018 if in 2017 we get tax reform done. So yeah, that's the plan. Do it this year.
Great question. Other questions out there? We got one over here.
Hi, my name is Rosa Bartol. Thank you and welcome.
Rosa?
Rosa Bartol. So what are we doing about education for our children? Right now, it's such a big problem because all our kids are really getting in debt before they get out of school, and it's not really encouraging. My daughter just happens to be lucky enough because I'm a disabled veteran, so she gets to go to school for free. But how about all the other American children?
Yeah.
And if you want to keep it American, don't we have to invest in them so that they can have a better education but not get in debt and be in the situation that we are in America today?
Absolutely. There are a few things I'd say. When I went to college, I did a lot of loans to pay for my school. I worked 3 jobs coming out of college just to pay them off, but they were doable.
Yep.
And when I did my loans, I did it with a nonprofit group called Great Lakes Higher Education Center. If you're from the Midwest, you probably know what this one is. Yeah, right. You probably got your loans there. And they customized the loan for me to pay off my loans. I went from 3 jobs to 2 jobs back to 3 jobs, and they adjust and they modified for me. The problem we have is about in 2010, they nationalized the student loan industry to the point where we can't customize loans anymore because we have one loan provider. So I think we need to denationalize the student loan industry so that we have more competition, more loan providers, so that as students we have choices, but also having choice and competition, that brings down costs. I mean, if you didn't have any competitor in the airplane business, you can set whatever price you want. But you do have competitors, so you can't set whatever price you want. Everything in markets work like that, but in student loans, they nationalize the thing. So I think we need to overhaul the way student loan financing works and the provision of loans. But before you get to college, we need to have a really good education system that gets you through K through 12 and on. We passed a very important education reform last December on a bipartisan basis. Patty Murray worked on this with us quite a bit.
Yep.
You probably know Patty, I'm sure.
Just a little.
So yeah, just a little. So we worked on ESSA, we call it. We changed, remember the old No Child Left Behind? We got rid of that and we replaced it with education reform that gives the states the ability to customize and fix their education problems in their states. Washington State's probably a little different than Wisconsin, let alone New York or Connecticut. So now those states are customizing their education plans for performance, and that's occurring right now. So we have a brand new K through 12 law that is just getting implemented. We just passed, as Dan and I were just mentioning, in July, career and technical education reform. Because when you get between K through 12 and post-secondary, you can go to college, 4-year degree, which is great, and we want a lot of people to do that, and we want that to be more affordable. We need more transparency and more competition. But we also have to recognize, especially if we're going to revitalize manufacturing in America like we are trying to with tax reform and regulatory reform, career and technical education is really important. So we just overhauled that system. That bill is moving its way through the Senate. And that means let the career and technical education system dovetail to what employers need. Give employers the ability, if they want to, take these resources and set up their own training programs. If you got, how many square feet you got here? 5 million?
It's about 98 acres in this building here.
So dedicate 2 acres, to training people to go work at Boeing, and you can design a curriculum to do that. Those are the kinds of innovative things we're saying, because before our education system was, here's the degree, here's the employer, and they don't really work or talk to each other. We want the employers and the degree makers to be on the same page, and in some cases the same people. That's the kind of 21st century education reform on career and technical education we're just in the midst of processing. So we think it's really important, and we think we're making great strides on that.
Yeah, and just to translate that locally here, right? We're partnering with Paul and the team on how we leverage this investment. So things like what we do locally here with Aviation High School and vocational training for the future. Great example of partnership there. Investment in STEM careers. What we're doing with the FIRST Robotics program, another great example. Our internship programs, that's another great example. So there's a lot of business government partnering that can be done here to build this talent pipeline for the future. Got time for maybe 1 or 2 more?
We have one last question here.
You were speaking of exports earlier. A couple of years ago, a lot of our Republican Senate was firmly against the Ex-Im Bank.
Ex-Im Bank.
Oh.
What was your position
we were going to get an Ex-Im Bank
I knew this was coming.
Also, second question is, what's the plan for the debt ceiling?
What's the path for the debt ceiling? I'm about to speak to CNBC, and then something tells you they're going to ask me the same question. The path for the debt ceiling is we will pass legislation to make sure that we pay our debts, and we will not hit the debt ceiling. We'll do this before the debt ceiling. There are many different options in front of us on how to achieve that. We'll do that because this is about paying the bills that we already racked up, making sure we pay our debts. We pay our debts in this country. We will continue to do so. So I'm not worried that that's not going to get done, because it's going to get done. On the Ex-Im Bank, a lot of us have really called for reforms in the Ex-Im Bank because we want to make sure that taxpayer dollars are being used wisely and that we're not giving any particular business advantage over others. But the biggest thing I think we can do to help a business like this get our taxes fixed, get our regulations fixed, and open up markets. Open up markets for our products to be sold so that the tariffs and the market access are at least as good as our competitors are when they go around the world. So I'm a big believer in trade. I'm a big believer in export. And I think those things right there reduce the need for those kinds of financing mechanisms so that we can get good trade agreements that help us make and sell things overseas. You combine that with regulatory relief and tax reform, there's nothing stopping America and American businesses. So to me, that's sort of the secret to success on that.
And we're going to continue to work together on Ex-Im Bank as well, right? We know it's important to create U.S. manufacturing jobs, but the foundational elements that the speaker's pointing out, that creates job growth, economic growth even more broadly. So those are compatible objectives, and we're going to continue working together on that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we're up against the time stop. Is that right? So Speaker Ryan's on a busy schedule, but again, I want to thank the speaker for spending the time with us and investing the time here with us in the world's biggest factory. And we're proud to work with you on these initiatives for the country. And I want to thank you for your personal leadership, your engagement, your enthusiasm for what we're trying to do. This pro-business environment's a big deal. And you got our commitment as a company to continue to lead with innovation, lead in manufacturing, and create U.S. jobs. So,
Dennis, I thank you so much. I am just in awe of what you do and who you are here. I wish every American citizen could come here.
It's an amazing team.
It's an amazing thing. I wish everybody could come here and see what it is you do and produce, because it is something that we are extremely proud of, just as a fellow citizen, of what you do here. It's really, really impressive. And thank you for having me here today. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Right on. Well
thank
said.
you, Dennis.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
It's good
This
seeing
is
you.
great. Yeah, thank you. Wonderful. Head this way? Okay.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Work. Thank you all.